is Civics, Chapter 10, Section 4, U.S. Political Campaigns. So, to be elected to pretty much any public office in the United States, a candidate must run a political campaign, which is an organized drive on the part of a candidate to get elected to public office. Political campaigns in the United States take a lot of planning, a lot of time, and especially a lot of money to keep it going. Political parties are able to fund candidates to begin their campaigns when they first start out. When you first start out trying to get elected into like a local position or any kind of smaller office, you need some startup money. Most Americans don't have enough money to fund themselves. You join a political party and they will all kind of spot you so you can get your career started because each Democrats and Republicans, they both want more of members of their party into office. So as long as a candidate meets the requirements for the public office they are seeking, they can run a political campaign for themselves. So why are there political campaigns? Why don't they just have someone put a sign up and be done? Well, candidates use political campaigns to convince the voters to vote for them. Voters need to be, if you want someone to support you, you got to convince them to. Political campaigns help the voters become informed about each of the candidates, so when they look at the ballot, they don't ask, well, I have no idea who this person is. So the information about each candidate that they give out is really their political platform, which is a formal set of principles and goals and beliefs by a candidate. Without campaigning, voters would not even recognize, like I said, who was on the ballot. There needs to be campaigning, get the word out, gain support. That's all part of trying to get elected to public office. The political campaign starts as soon as the candidate decides to run for elected office. Usually, if you're forward-thinking, you kind of garner some support before you even put your name in the hat. Candidates usually hire a campaign manager to run the campaign and ensure their candidate uses the best strategies to get elected. It takes strategies to get elected. You can't, as we're going to discuss shortly, make speeches everywhere. Like you can't be everywhere in this short amount of time. Where to spend most of your time, where to advertise the most, everything like that. Larger political campaigns, such as the president, which is the largest campaigns in the U.S., or even senator campaigns are really large. They have hundreds of employees that work for them. You can see here, this young lady might be still in college or whatever. A lot of people volunteer to support campaigns to help their candidate win. A lot of young people join in because they have the time, they don't have families, they can travel around with these candidates, and they can also gain political experience the political scene if they're thinking about breaking into politics themselves. So, what are you going to do? How are you going to campaign? Well, on every campaign level, candidates give speeches to large groups of people called rallies. And at these rallies, organized by the campaign manager, you promote yourself. All right, they're usually televised, recorded, and usually you have a good crowd because no one's going to show up there that doesn't like you. So your supporters there, so it makes you look good. So when you string a bunch of these speeches and these rallies together, that makes up your campaign trail. So if you look here, in the days leading up to the 2020 election, Trump went all over the place here, just traveling a lot, making speeches. So did Biden. You can see that usually the thing about campaigns is that you have to be strategical. Like Trump doesn't need to go to Texas because he knows he's going to get the Republican vote there, or he knows he's not going to go to California because he knows he's not going to win there. So he's going to go to states like Ohio, North Carolina, Tennessee, Florida, all right, Wisconsin. These are called battleground states. And look, oh, Biden's going to go to the same places because those are the states that they need to spend time and try to convince the voters. Because if he spends a lot of time in places where they already have a lot of support and they know they're going to win there, all that's just a waste of time. Because there's only so much time you have to travel and make speeches. So doing that, it kind of makes sense. You got to be strategic. And hopefully the campaign manager makes a good campaign trail for yourself. Candidates speak at rallies not only to get their political platform heard, but also to convince voters that they are the best candidate for the position. They're pretty much used car salesmen to try to convince you. Politicians are known to promise the people outlandish claims to garner excitement and to support at these rallies. Often, politician is elected. There are many of these promises do not get fulfilled. An example is that President Bush, Sr., the first one, promised no new taxes, very adamantly during his campaign. The year after he was elected president, taxes were increased. And then Donald Trump gained large support because of his promise of building a wall between the U.S. and Mexico. And he promised Mexico would pay for it. The wall project was started but not finished. And the entire project that was built was funded by the U.S. government. So nothing what he said really came to true. So, this is just such a famous thing he said, read my lips, no new taxes. Then he raised it. And then, Donald Trump with a border promise. And then, to Bill Clinton, he says, no wonder Americans hate politics. When year in, year out, they hear politicians make promises that won't come true because they don't even mean them. Campaign fantasies that win elections but don't get nations moving again. So candidates, they need to garner that support, that excitement. A lot of times they make false promises to do so. And it's just harder to come through on those promises than maybe they realize. Most of the issues candidates talk about are common, such as almost every candidate talks about job creation, the economy. They're going to boost more jobs, boost the economy, tax cutting. Americans don't like to pay tax, or that's popular. Healthcare, everybody wants healthcare. That's a big issue. Rights of citizens, that's always a big issue too. That's most candidates talk about that every election. But sometimes, depending on what's going on in the nation, there's certain subjects that dominate the political scene during that time. Like 2020, pretty much most of the election was centered on the COVID-19 pandemic and what each candidate was going to do to solve it. That was just the heart of the election, and each candidate tried to convince American people that they had the better plan. Like in 1980, the presidential campaign focused on getting the U.S. hostages released in Iran. Like that was on everybody's mind, and so they just talked about it a lot. And that 1960 presidential election was obviously right before the Civil War, so it was based on slavery. So sometimes just one issue might dominate the political discussion at that time. Part of the campaign's manager's job is to advertise for the candidate. Most of the money spent for a political campaign goes to advertising. Campaigns attempt to develop a slogan or motto that Americans can easily remember positively, something catchy. Donald Trump's "Make America Great Again" was met with mass popularity, although Ronald Reagan really started that trend. His was "Let's Make America Great Again," so Donald Trump kind of stole that. A lot of people don't know that. And then during Dwight D. Eisenhower's campaign, one of the most famous slogans that really worked was "I like Ike." There was a commercial like Ike for president. Like I like Ike. Ike was Dwight Eisenhower's nickname. Something catchy is Lyndon B. Johnson. LBJ all the way. It rhymes. It's catchy. Herbert Hoover promised a better economy, so his slogan was "Chicken in every pot, car in every garage." So you can see these posters here. Just trying to like some of the more famous advertising. The better the advertising, the better campaign manager you had. The political campaigns distribute signs, shirts, hats, flags, everything. Trying to get that message out. Vote for this candidate. You're just trying to convince those people. These campaign managers are trying to advertise as much as they can. And candidates encourage their supporters to wear their political gear during election season to get the message out. Also, like the sign planning has been key for a long time, trying to get that prime spot in a given public space. So people are seeing. Sometimes people just put like just so many signs in one spot. So just trying to get that message out. The most expensive advertising, though, is commercial advertising on television. It's the most expensive, but it believes that it works the best. Getting the message out, because really what it is like a 30-second clip of your candidate telling what they're going to do. It's like that snippet, short, sweet, to the point, trying to convince the American people. Especially when the election day is near, advertisements ramp up and they become quite expensive. Pretty much can't turn on a television or on YouTube now during election season without seeing some kind of commercial for a political candidate. This year, Joe Biden spent more than any other candidate before on advertising. He spent $652 million on media advertising commercials. There were over 5 million commercials aired for the 2020 presidential and U.S. Senate elections. That's not counting the local stuff. This is like nationwide stuff. That's a lot of commercials. To air one commercial in a nation for that last week before the election, it was $200,000. That's why candidates just have to fundraise so much and ask for donations and everything like that because it costs so much money to get that word out. In U.S. politics, often candidates do not only promote their political ideals, but also attempt to discredit them. That's called mudslinging. That's the process of deliberately spreading negative information about someone to worsen their public image. Almost all candidates do this at every governmental position to use mudslinging. They're trying to discredit, not only promote themselves, but put their other candidate down, try to convince the people that they're the right one to choose and the other person's the wrong one. They'll point out the flaws in their opponent's political platform to make theirs seem a lot better. Campaign managers will hire people to kind of dig up dirt on the opponent and then release it to the public and kind of exploit any flaws in their character to try to convince the people to not vote for them. Example was that Hillary Clinton's campaign dug up audio tape of Donald Trump using some offensive language, inappropriate language that really hurt his public image. Mudslinging, name calling, discrediting one's opponent has always been around in U.S. politics. In 1800, Thomas Jefferson and John Adams were throwing insults at each other the entire election. Jefferson called Adams a blind, bald, crippled, toothless man with a hideous, hermaphroditic character with neither the force or fitness of a man nor the gentleness and sensibility of a woman. That was fighting words back then. Even though it kind of seems like fancy language now, that was a good insult. And Adams called Jefferson a mean-spirited, low-lived fellow and the son of a half-breed Indian squaw. Oh, those are fighting words back then for sure. So politics just brings that nature out of people. You're competing, so you're trying to do everything that you can. Now we have these mudslinging television commercials that are like so serious, and they point out all these dangerous wrongdoings of their opponent, and they try to play on the fear of Americans. trying to even be scared to even have the other candidate to be elected. And then politicians understand that scrutiny under the public spotlight is inevitable while serving in public office. If you're going to put your hat in the ring, you're going to have to be subject to all these private things about your life. Um, but these are some of the commercials. Uh, you know, it's like always like serious commercial, darker background. Trying to, they never have a flattering picture of the person. You know, so that's what they try to do to discredit their competition. Candidates do get a chance to face each other publicly in debates. There are usually 3 presidential debates before an election, and debates allow candidates to answer questions on subjects that will help voters decide which candidate they prefer. Candidates do often get a chance to go back and forth with each other and argue with each other, but it seems like with modern day politics, it kind of gets out of hand. With Donald Trump and Joe Biden, like there was not much decorum during that debate. It gets fierce. Usually, the moderator has to end the discussion or move on because the politicians will just bicker and argue for hours. It's usually very subjective who wins a political debate. Usually, the candidate you support you think wins or whatever. But with the internet, it's easy to fact check both candidates to see who is actually saying the correct things. And then political campaigns, even though they're long, they're hard fought, but there's always a loser. When most of the voters are challenged and the candidates face the realization that they have lost the election, the candidate gives a concession speech, which is just publicly yielding to a winning candidate after an election. It's tough to do, but in American politics, it's seen as proper. You do not have to do this. It's just something that you should do to keep peace in the country. Politicians often make amends with their opponents. They don't really hold grudges. It's just part of the whole process of being elected in the United States. That you're going to be under scrutiny. Both candidates are going to battle fiercely. There's going to be some name calling, some mudslinging, but at the end, all the candidates are for just making the United States America.